Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Vicarage Road. Are you ready? Is the song that's coming out over the PA system, and let's hope Norwich City are tonight. They can continue their positive start to the Championship season, albeit, of course, trying to respond to last week's defeat with a win here this evening against Watford. Just getting various results up from earlier in the day, but I'm pretty sure a win would take Norwich City back to the top of the Championship. Indeed, it would. So there's that at stake. And here comes the team news. It's a start for Angus Gunn and for Kieran Dowell, and Isaac Hayden is on the bench for Norwich City this evening alongside Todd Cantwell. So Norwich City line up like this: Gunn in goal, Aarons, Omar Mamadeli, Hanley and Byram the back four, McLean and Nunez looking like the midfield two. Gibson there as well. Sargent on the right. I'm guessing that would be Dowell on the left, would it? Yes, with Pookie up front. The suspension of Tim Krul, Ben Gibson, Isaac Hayden, Todd Cantwell, Gabriel Sarah, Aaron Ramsey and Onel Hernandez. Pad, plenty to pick out of that. Should we start with the goalkeeper? We've spoken about it. We've written pieces on it. Dean Smith has decided to do it. He's decided to change his goalkeeper. He's kind of confessed throughout when we've asked him various times about that kind of competition that he didn't feel there was a whole lot between the two of them beyond the experience. He's tipped in Angus Gunn's favour tonight. Are you surprised by that decision?
No, absolutely not. And I think that there'd have been more questions asked if he'd have retained Tim Krul for me. That's what he said earlier in the season. Nothing between them. Tim's got the shirt. If he drops his performance level, then Angus is ready to step in. Well, he's a man of his word, because it wasn't good enough last week, Tim Krul. Big mistakes. Two of the goals you could put at his door. And as a result, there's a guy there who I certainly felt didn't really deserve to come out towards the end of the Premier League. I still to this day don't know why Tim Krul came back in for that final Tottenham game, because Angus Gunn had done nothing in terms of his own performance levels to warrant coming out of the side. We thought at the time maybe there was more to it. Maybe that was a swan song for Tim Krul. It hasn't proven to be the case. And it's when push has come to shove for the league this season, it's been Tim Krul. So, ultimately, if you've got two keepers you think there's not a huge amount between them, then one drops their levels, the other one deserves to have a go. And it's a big night for Angus. And Angus was in goal here when they won here 3-0 in the Premier League, last season. For me, as good a story as that is, it's Isaac Hayden is the headline in that. He didn't want to put a timeline on it last week. Well, 1 week's training and he's straight back in and on the bench. And in the wider context, that's massive. That's massive that he's trusting him enough, and he's an experienced player, so I'm sure he's been feeding back that his body's fine and he feels he's up to this now. This guy's had no pre-season whatsoever. He had a week's pre-season and then has basically been on a fitness train ever since, and within that a setback which required a minor procedure, and he hasn't kicked a ball competitively. I think December of last year was the last time he played professionally at a competitive level. So it's big news that Isaac Hayden, in Dean Smith's opinion, is fit enough to at least be in the mix. A little bit surprised Gabby Zara doesn't get the nod, but ultimately I guess Kieran Dowell, in the way that Dean Smith wants to go about the task tonight, maybe he feels... I personally was hoping he'd retain the attacking shape that he started the Preston game, i.e., let's not call it a diamond. Dean Smith said it was a flatter three in midfield with Ramsey in behind, crucially, Sargent and Pookie. And I think there's no debate that Sargent down the middle is where he's most effective, certainly where he's more of a goal threat. And subject to that not being the case, you look at that personnel he's named in at 11, you called it. It does very much look like it's a reversion to Sargent, maybe on the right-hand side of a three, with Pookie leading the line down the middle. So if that goes to plan, then we won't be discussing why has Josh Sargent been shoehorned again on the right-hand side. But for me, it just felt that worked, that really did work. And I know the result went against them, but it looked a better fit. There looked to be more rhythm and cohesion to Norwich going forward. But ultimately, as Dean Smith did say, it won't always be that. It'll be horses for courses. He looked at it possibly how Watford are going to go about the task and has felt that, no, we need to tweak it slightly. But Gunn, not a surprise for me. Sarah, slightly surprised. Hayden, big surprise that he feels now, after 1 week's training, he's ready to come in and at least be a factor on the bench. And as I say, maybe we won't see him tonight on the pitch, but the fact that he's now fit and available and on a bench, how long before we actually see him in the heart of that central midfield? So positives everywhere you look, really. I mean, what's your take on it, Connor?
Interesting, yeah. All I would caveat on the shape is obviously Kieran Dowd, I suppose, could come into that same role that Ramsey did last weekend, and it could be that 4-3-1-2, as Dean Smith described it. Diamond, it's semantics, really, isn't it? But that could still be how Norwich City line up. They could certainly, obviously, transition in and out of possession, as we tend to see teams do these days. Just on the Watford team, very quickly, 3 changes for them. They've got Daniel Bachmann, Chowdhury, Troost Ekong, Loza, Davis, Sema, Kamara, Cathcart, Gosling, who's playing right back tonight, I believe, Aspria, and Ismaila Sarr, who's a very good player at this level, also boosted by João Pedro's presence on the bench. He's there alongside Okoye, Bako, Kalu, Pollock, Kiyembe, and James Morris. Slavan Bilic, of course, Watford manager this week. So we'll see how that transpires in the weeks ahead. Paddy, I mean, Kieran Dowd is another one to discuss. I mean, you kind of touched upon Isaac Hayden. Brilliant to see him back on the bench, and we know how personally devastated he was when he came to the club and had those injury problems. So I'm sure this will be, certainly feels like a major hurdle, doesn't it, that he's overcome. Whether we'll see him on the pitch tonight, I suppose, is a different matter. But to turn attentions onto Kieran Dowd, he's been a player who maybe hasn't necessarily had the opportunities that perhaps he would like by his own admission because of other attacking players. Aaron Ramsey's come in and looked very good beyond perhaps the last couple of games where he's maybe faded out of them a little bit. Marcelino Nunez has been quite good as well. I noticed there's not a spot for Daniel Sanani in the matchday squad at all either. Jordan Hugill not on the bench either, which shows the quality that Norwich City have. But Kieran Dowd, this is a mega opportunity for him tonight, isn't it? Whether he is in that 10 role tipping sort of or behind, I suppose, Pookie and Sargent, or whether it is on the left of a 4-3-3, I suppose. Yeah, time will tell in terms of A, the shape, and B, Kieran Dowd's role within it. But yeah, it feels like we keep saying this with Kieran Dowd. The talent is in doubt. Certainly at this level, he should be able to come onto a football pitch at championship level and show his quality, because we've seen it. But yet, we're however many months, years now, seasons into his Norwich career, and has he really nailed down, bar that last time in the championship when he came in and it was him and Cantwell and Emi Buendia supplying Pookie, you really thought, yeah, Kieran Dowd has arrived now and he's going to go on. Didn't happen for him in the Premier League, and he did start games this time around in the championship, but him and Sanani weren't really cutting the mustard, and they came out the side, and he's had to make do with some cameos since. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Connor. This is a big night for him in the context of, particularly now I'm looking at that bench, and Cantwell's back in the mix as well. We know about Zara, Ramsey's on the bench, Hernandez. If you don't hit your stride now as an attacking midfielder or an offensive option, then there's plenty of other competition. And so, as an audition, this could be it for Kieran Dowd tonight. If he doesn't perform and doesn't influence the game, and weighs in hopefully with an assist or two, even better, a goal or two, then it might be a while before we see him again in the starting lineup. But there's no doubt Dean Smith likes him as a footballer, and there's plenty to like. But I think you'd be hard pushed to say he's really established himself as a frontline starter for Norwich, and that's on Kieran Dowd. He's had different coaches, he's been deployed in different roles, but fundamentally it comes down to the player grabbing his opportunity. And a little bit harsh on Ramsey maybe, although I did feel the last 2 or 3 games his performance levels have tailed off. But and as a result, to prove the point, out you come, in you go, Kieran. See if you can do any better. And if Kieran Dowd doesn't tonight, then personally I'd like to see Todd Cantwell then get his opportunity, because I think he started the season with the air of a man who really wanted to be part of it and really wanted to put his stamp on it, and we know his quality at this level. He fell away to a degree as well. He's had 1 or 2 fitness issues, but there's no doubt for me, I think Todd Cantwell, if I'm looking at those, we'll call them the number 10 type options, I think I'd lean towards Todd Cantwell over the entire piece, who can influence championship games the most out of that selection. Maybe you can throw Zara in there as well, although we haven't seen enough of him to judge really. But yeah, tonight for me, Kieran Dowd really needs to get on the ball and make Norwich tick and connect the middle part of the pitch to the forward line, and really not be on the periphery, which for me is what we say too often about Kieran Dowd, that he just, he'll show 1 or 2 bits of quality, but he never really grabs a game, does he? He's always on the margins, and
to repeat what I just said there, he's probably running out of opportunities if he wants to be a frontline option for Dean Smith this season.
Absolutely. I think that wraps things up quite nicely. To kind of cap off the strength in depth that Norwich City have, they can make 5 subs, obviously, tonight, as the rules have been in the Championship this season. You just have to look at their bench. Tim Krul, Ben Gibson, Isaac Hayden, Todd Cantwell, Gabriel Sara, Aaron Ramsey, Onel Hernandez. Not bad, is it? My fear, to be honest, is that this Norwich City team doesn't have a great deal of pace in it. And if the game perhaps transpires or Watford have a spell, it may become difficult for Norwich City to get themselves out of that, but we shall see how it transpires. It's certainly going to be an intriguing game against, of course, 2 teams that were in the Premier League last season. Slavan Bilic looking for his first home win. I believe I read on the way here that Watford haven't won a Saturday game at this place.
Don't say it.
Well, Norwich don't have a particularly great record at this place either, but they did win 3-0, of course, in January as well. So, Pat, to throw it back over to you for the final word. How do you see this one going? Because it's a really interestingly poised fixture, with Watford obviously looking to get themselves up the table and Norwich City, of course, looking to get themselves to the top of the table.
Exactly, but I mean, we've seen it again. We've been driving, left Norwich just after the start of the 3 o'clock kickoffs and the madness of the Championship, that Sheffield United and Blackpool game. Go and have a look at the key moments in that game. I don't think you can go to any Championship fixture and reasonably or confidently predict the outcome, and that's the same tonight, because ultimately you've got a team who are 1 win in 6. Bilic is maybe struggling to sort of put his ideas across in the early parts of his reign against the team who I know they've just tailed off, and obviously coming off the back of the Preston defeat, but prior to, they were on a very, very good 9-10 game unbeaten run. You'd think Norwich would have enough to come here and get a result tonight, but we've obviously spent, understandably, a lot of focus looking at the Norwich lineup, but I'm just having another glance down at the names in that Watford team, the attacking names. Ismail Assar, real scourge for Norwich, and the last 2 or 3 times those teams have met, excellent player. Ken Sema, Keenan Davis, they have a quality, and I think they're too good for the results they're producing at the minute. And if you're Bilic, you're looking for a statement win, aren't you? Particularly in front of your own fans, and what better way to do it than taking down another team who came out of the Premier League with you. So I can feasibly see all 3 results, if I'm honest, Connor, but I think I might do a bit of fence sitting and go for another draw, another maybe Reading type draw. Hopefully not a Reading type performance. I'd like to see a bit more control from Norwich, but I just think they've got attacking players who could score goals, and Norwich have as well. So it might end up being honours even. But what we don't want clearly is that stat you called up about Watford not winning at home in 11 months, whatever it was, on a Saturday. Let's hope that it continues to be the case, and if it is, then it's not the worst result here to come here and get a draw tonight for me, and just keeps it rolling on, and obviously then it moves on. Sheffield United, Burnley on the horizon, but I think it's important tonight to, certainly after the back of the Preston game, to really come out and individually cut out those silly errors, and then ultimately look far more cohesive for longer periods than they have done pretty much all season. So looking tomorrow right, there's going to be 1,900 Norwich fans here. And the last time he was here, what an atmosphere and what an experience for those Norwich fans on that night. And it'd be great to experience that again. Connor, score prediction, mate?
You've sat on the fence, so that means I'm not allowed to now. Because I was going to say a draw. I'll tip it and I'll go for a 2-1 Norwich. I can see there being goals in this, though, to be completely honest. Both teams have some really good attacking players. I was actually going to ask you to pan round and show the away end. There's Sam Seaman sitting there working hard. As ever. 1,900 or so Norwich City fans are going to be in there. Hopefully it's a similar atmosphere to what we saw here in, was it January or February? I think it was January, late January, when of course Norwich City won 3-0. I think I'm sat, if you want a good omen, I think I'm sat in probably exactly the same seat as I was when Josh Sargent scored that brace. A bit of that again would be lovely. Thank you all very much for watching. Of course, you can go to the Pinken channels for coverage of this game, analysis and reaction as well afterwards from us and from Dean Smith. It's going to be a very interesting encounter. Wherever you're following, enjoy the game, and fingers crossed for a positive result for Norwich City. Thank you very much for watching.